Anyway, you've been down this road before. I'll go through a little bit of a intro monologue. That's why I got that thing there. And then we'll just go on and just talk.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, Lord knows.
Do I wear headphones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lord knows you and I have talked plenty of times.
Make sure you guys can hear each other.
Yeah. Can you hear?
Yep, loud and clear.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we're good, man.
Yep.
I'll just start. Start this one with a timer.
And welcome to a special pre-recorded program this evening. Hey, glad to have you back on Three Chords and the Truth. I'm Pete Kramer, your host. Again, Captain Nipple Rings couldn't be here again because I didn't tell him that we were pre-recording the show. But I will tell you, his band, Buffalo's Rockin' Country Band, the Noblemen, they're starting to play gigs around, so check out things around. Their shows are always a good time. They got a good mix of modern country and rock and stuff like that. As always, over at Master Control, we got Mr. Sebastian De Jesus, who we just rescued from a golf course today. He looks like he's been burned to death and probably dehydrated, but he still made it because he's a pro. And don't forget to try to catch his 42 North 78 West sports show on Facebook Live. As always, don't forget about our friends at Special Spaces. They do amazing things. They do bedroom redos for children with cancer. Bev, Lynn, Peggy, they're good friends of mine. I'll probably be seeing them in a few weeks at our high school reunion. They're just great people. I don't think that there's an awful lot of point in leaving comments tonight because this is not live. We can't really quite come back and answer them. So, but as always, you can go ahead, say what you'd like to say. We'll get back to you when the show does air. And as usual, like our page, subscribe, and you can always come back and check it out when it is archived on YouTube. So I'm really stoked tonight because tonight it's always good, everybody that we've had on, and a lot of people are people that I've never met before. I can't say the same about this gentleman that I have to my left at the moment, and he's probably going to yell at me for calling him a gentleman, but
yeah, that don't fly around here.
He's a good friend of mine, probably known him longer than he'd like to admit, and he's like in every band in Buffalo at some point or whatever. He plays every instrument. I've said this for years. One of these days, I'm going to put an oboe in his hands, and I swear to God, he'll be able to figure out how to play it. But without further ado, my good friend, Larry Smith.
Hey, guys. Hey, Pete, thanks for having me on.
No, I'm very glad to have you, man. I've been, I was hoping that you would do the show. I really was, because Larry is the kind of guy, by his own admission, I'm not saying this, he's told me this several times before.
Lies.
He doesn't like to be, I mean, he's the most talented guy that you want to know, but he doesn't like to be in the front. He wants to be the guy in the background that's making everything come together and sound beautiful. And man, he's got a talent for doing that.
Yeah, the best way to sound good is stay in the back. Don't make a lot of noise.
Right.
And everyone thinks you're just the cat's pajamas. There's something wrong with that.
So right now you are in the Chris Squire band.
Yeah, I would say my main gig is playing with my good friend Chris Squire and the rest of the guys. We have, as you know, Mr. Steve Bell on drums,
Yep.
and Mr. Nathan Gavix on keyboards, and that's where most of the energy goes. But there's always a few side projects and things. Again, Chris Squire has been playing acoustic rock in the area as well for the better part of 10 or 15 years.
Right.
And I've been tagging along for a lot of those shows for the past 8 or 9 years, maybe. So he keeps me busy with that kind of stuff. And then we have a couple other friends that we play with, the Fonda family, Porcelain Train.
Yep.
I like to hang around with a guy named Harvey Bryce, whose band The Unbroken has been a mainstay of the punk rock scene. There's another name he has for it, like goth punk rock.
Really? I never got that from his music.
The way it was, the direction he was going in with it last time, before the world shut down and everything like that, he was moving in a very particular direction with things, and obviously everything got moved into the back burner again. So many of these projects are still kind of waiting to come back up at some point in the future when everyone's schedules allow for it and everything like that. But
well, Harvey was pretty heavily influenced by Bowie.
Oh, his list of influences was surprisingly long. Well, you're right though. David Bowie was one of his favorites.
Yeah,
I think that's
what I got from him anyway.
He likes all kinds of stuff. He's just another. I like hanging around with all you exceptionally creative individuals.
You're not including me in that.
I'm telling you, I love songwriters.
Well,
guys who come up with stuff.
Before we dig too deep in, though, how's Steve Bell doing?
He's last couple times I've seen him, he's fantastic.
Okay, because I know he was in the hospital with COVID.
He's back to normal.
Okay,
I'm going to say
good. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh gosh, no.
But no, and again, I'm not gushing, but I'm going to heap a lot of accolades on this guy's shoulders, because there's been so many times I'd call him up and say, "Hey, Larry, Larry, could you play this? Could you do this?" And there was even one day that I called him when he was still at work, and I said, "Larry, I got a piece of carpet that I have to get in my basement. Is there any way you could stop by? You don't even have to play an instrument, man, but just help me get this carpet in the basement."
Remember that.
How many instruments do you play?
I play two. The ones with the strings on them and the ones like with the keys on them. It's just, you can play a guitar, you can play a bass, you play a ukulele. That's all the fun stuff. And if you grant your audience a view of your the extended version of your room, you'll probably be able to not argue with me on that, because you have all these instruments here as well. You're pretty.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, the one time Alex couldn't make a charity thing that we were doing, as usual, pick up the phone. "Larry, can you play drums for this?" "Yeah," and he showed up. He didn't even know the set list. That's how good the guy is. We didn't rehearse. We did nothing, and he's like, "I think I remember that one." And he doesn't skip a beat. It's just crazy.
I think I skipped a number of beats that night, but no. What it comes down to is it's music. You're doing it to have fun,
and we do have fun.
That's what I mean.
Have we ever not had fun doing that?
That's why when you call out of the blue and ask for if I can help with something, even if I know that I can't do what you're expecting.
Yeah.
And the same goes for you. I mean, we've gotten together for various. We're not always sitting in the basement recording.
No.
We've gotten together for various things. I remember you reaching out to me because you had decided that we were going to play Here, There, and Everywhere in your garage for a family function. And I just remember being excited. I got over here. You and I ran over the song a couple times. We kind of learned it on the fly.
Yep.
Played it. It was fantastic.
It was for Ronnie's brother's wedding.
Yes.
Yep.
I knew exactly.
Yep. We had a little reception in the garage for it.
And it was 10 minutes of so much fun.
Yeah.
And it really was. I think we sat down here for 10 minutes and learned it early in the day. Then we played it, and then it was like, wow, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, of course, never played it again.
No. No, that's very true. I'll give you two Larryisms, if you will, that I remember specifically. And at one point, I'm pretty sure you were still on Facebook. Up at the Cove, it was the Exposure concert,
Yes.
right? Exposure is not what you think it is. Exposure was a music festival that went on for like 2.5 days, I think, right?
Yes.
And a variety of different musicians would get up and play for an hour or something like that. But Larry was still on Facebook. I must have posted something. So I called him on the phone. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but I said, "Hey, Larry, what are you doing on this date?" And you said, "I'm playing at the Exposure concert with my good friend Pete."
I do remember that one. We did that twice though, didn't we? Because there was one time we did that with the band.
Probably, yes.
And there was one time that you and I just did
Just
it
you
with
and
a
I,
couple
yeah.
acoustic guitars.
Yeah, well, that was the first time I met Ralph and Tam. Was when you and I did it alone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we got there a little bit early. You knew them. I did not. And I'm listening to them play. And when they got done with their set, we were getting ready to go up. And they were nothing but kind and generous, right? They hadn't even heard me do anything yet. And I'm like, I'm really nervous. And they're like, why? I said, I wish I would have gone on before you guys instead of after. How do you follow that up, man? And you know what I'm talking about. They're good.
Well, they're good. They're good because they've been playing together for so long, and they're married and the whole 9 yards.
Right.
That's they've got that special. They're very, very particular, and they've been working at their craft, very focused in a very focused way for years and years and years. Whereas you are the type who, on the opposite side of the spectrum, will have something ready and call in a complete stranger or someone who's never heard the song before. So you're not expecting people to be doing the same part on the song and whatnot. You're more saying, hey, here's what I'm playing. See what you feel about it.
Right.
Play your version of
Yep.
it. You know what I mean? Add to it in your way. And that's a different sort of a different art form. Which, and again, it's one of the things that ever since I first met you, I was really impressed with your continuing, I don't want to say patience, but continually being open to those sorts of things.
I dig that. Creativity to me is just.
That's what I mean. I've seen you have a number of regular folks in your bands over the years,
Yeah.
but I've also seen you have a number of people who come in and kind of make their mark for 6 months or so and move on.
Right.
And I've never seen the next person come in and be expected to sort of do what the last guy did.
No.
It's always like, hey, this is a new flavor, a new seasoning
Right.
to the mix, and let's see how this turns out. As opposed to, here's how it's supposed to turn out. Please do what I'm expecting it to have happen. So
No,
it's a nice approach.
that did happen one time. I remember that. I forget what song it was that I'd written, but I had an idea in my head as to how the drums should sound, but I'm not a drummer, And Alex comes in and he sits down and I'm trying to convey to him what's in my head, and he starts playing something different. I said, "Tell me to shut the hell up the next time I come up with an idea, because what you just did was amazingly perfect for that song. It was great." But no, thanks for that, Larry, because sometimes I stick my face in where it shouldn't be. And
Well, we can't help but do these things, especially if you're the person creating if you're the songwriter and you come up with this idea and you have this, this piece that you want to share with the world and what have you. Of course you have expectations for it, but you've always been open to being surprised, I guess is what it is.
Mhm.
And I say that I'm blessed by being associated with a lot of musicians. Almost all the musicians I work with are in the same boat.
Yeah.
Where they're willing to be surprised and really happy to be surprised. And it's you don't want to take that for granted, because there's a lot of people in this line of work that don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
They come in and there's a chart for them and they have to do it a certain way. And if they don't do it a certain way, they get one more chance and then
goodbye.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I'm going to go back and do another Larryism, because to me this was funny as hell. We were recording over at John Martin's studio. And I know that there were 3 songs, but one of them was Peach Rose. And I do a tempo change in the end of that. Remember, John was losing his mind. And you're jumping up. No, that's what's putting the flavor into it, man. That's like the salt that you put on the potatoes, right?
Well, that's right, because a lot of these things that, again, it's a matter of being surprised. When you first hear something, especially when a songwriter comes in with just their song and they're just showing it to you on on their acoustic guitar.
Which is always the hardest thing to do.
Exactly. But you've always got this preconceived notion. If you're one of these music people and you do this recording stuff, as soon as you hear it, your mind is already working on, well, here's where the drums are going to go. I'm picturing large guitars. I'm picturing this, that, and the other. So you've got these expectations. And then when the songwriter throws a couple curveballs, you got to kind of on the fly go, is that something I can work around, or do I try to change him and get it on board with with the direction I was seeing this going in? And it's I've certainly been guilty of both sides of that.
Does that happen a lot when you're doing stuff with
Oh my
Chris?
gosh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Where it's going so well, and then he'll throw a loop, throw a little curveball, and you kind of say to yourself, if he meant to do that, then he probably has a good idea of how that's going to work. But my idea of how it was going to work wouldn't go that route. And you got to learn to be patient with it.
No, that's the biggest deal.
And it's worth bearing in mind too. Once you've worked with someone for a pretty long period of time, you could tell when you, like you said, when you should shut up, let them run the show. And there's other situations where you kind of go, I want to throw my 2 cents in on this.
Sure.
It's like that with all this creative stuff.
Well, it's like, obviously, Doug Tisdale, I work with him.
Oh, of course.
We've been doing this for so long together that it's like we can finish each other's sentences. If I'm at a point in a song, I'm like, he'll know the chord that I'm looking for without me even saying what it is.
Yep.
I mean, that's the symbiotic relationship that you develop over the years. But also going back to that Peach Rose song, I remember saying to John that I said, I really think a banjo would sound good in there. And John's like, well, do you know anybody that has one? Because I didn't, he didn't. And my brother-in-law, Charlie, had just gotten one. I borrowed Charlie's banjo. I dropped it off with John. And you were coming over later that day. It was a Friday afternoon. It was hot as hell, just like today. I could still remember what you were wearing that day because you had long jeans on with bare feet. So about 7:30, 8 o'clock, Ronnie and I took a ride over to John's house to see what was going on, how you guys were doing. And you had just finished up doing a track. I remember saying to you, I said, so where'd you go? How'd you, what did you do with this? And you said, well, we just finished up the banjo track. I said, how'd you like that banjo? He says, I don't know. It's the first time I ever played one. First time he ever played one. And you got to hear this banjo track on that song. It's like killer. It's amazing.
It did the job.
It did the job,
and
but you did the job.
Well, you weren't there for while John and I were kind of discussing how it should go, because I'm relatively sure there were probably a couple rough starts at it. One of the good things about working with someone like John Martin is I've worked with him off and on for the better part of 20 years.
Sure.
He knows when to stop me in the middle of a bad idea too.
And he's not afraid to either.
No, and he's the most patient guy in the world. If I'm doing my own thing, he'll hands off, go ahead and find your way and everything. But if he's in a situation like that where we're working on something for somebody and there's a goal for it, if I start doing something and he's not feeling it, stop, hold on. What if we thought about this? What if we did it a different way? That's why he and I have always been a pretty good team as far as that sort of thing goes.
And both of you guys are very generous about that. I got to throw that in there. Both of you are.
Yeah, we are. But all the musicians I know in the area, once you get to be part of the club, it's almost like there's no shortage of people who are willing to. Because we all got into this because it's fun.
Yes.
And
it's kind of in our blood.
That's what I mean. And once it starts getting a little bit old, it's usually because we haven't been working with new people for a little while.
Yep.
When you're buried in your basement working on your 55th version of this song, doing it by yourself, it gets really old.
Right.
But when you have this opportunity to have a couple friends come over and I'll record you guys for a change, suddenly, oh my gosh, it just makes everything so much more.
Flip-flops.
Exactly. Yeah. It makes everything so much more exciting for a little bit. So the number of people I've been in that situation with over the years where they've gotten hold of me and said, hey, you want to come over and just make some noise in my basement? Help me out with a project, or let me help you out with a project, or whatever. It's just another thing that keeps it fresh and invigorating.
Cool. That's very cool. There was another one that we did. I think it was about 3 years ago. It was a song called Apocalypse Parts 1 and 2, and we recorded it, and it was just like, man, this is missing something. And I remember taking a clip of that and emailing it over to Ian Hannibin.
Oh yes.
And I said, Ian, tell me what you think about this, man. To me, it's just like, there's so much in it. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on in there. I mean, Doug had some killer guitar parts, and then you got Dave ripping things up on the organ and the key of the piano. Excuse me. And Ian sends me the thing back. He says, this is one of the best songs I've heard you guys do, but I know what you're talking about. It is missing something. And I said, well, tell me what it is, man. I just can't put my finger on it. And he says, you need to get a hold of Larry McCartney and throw some of his McCartney-style bass tracks on it. And I'll be damned if he wasn't right, because you jumped in, you never heard the song before.
No, but it's funny. I'm glad Ian came up out of this, because he's one of these guys who continually sells himself a little bit short on that kind of thing. He's one of my favorite musicians in the area. I love the fact that you were working with him for a while. I still remember the first time I came over here and came downstairs, and I don't know, it wasn't that day, but it was some other project you were doing.
That was for that Christmas in the Park.
Was he in that?
Yeah.
Was he? Okay.
That was the first time I met him.
Okay, then, because I remember coming down the basement and being like, Ian, what are you doing here? Because I had played with him at that point. I'd played with him in Harvey Bryce's Unbroken,
which is how I knew Ian, was because of that.
So it was like, he and I have been on these very similar journeys for a lot of this stuff over the years. But it's funny, he that's the kind of guy he is. He would throw my name out there for something like that. But my gosh, he's a fantastic bass player too.
Oh, I know he is. I mean, well,
that's what I mean. You worked with him for a while.
Yeah, my song More Like Him. I'm like, look, I'm hearing something in my head, but I don't know how to convey this to you because I'm not that type of a player. Well, he came up with that whole opening bass riff for it. I'm like, that is freaking perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have articulated that to you any better. But no, what you were just alluding to was that one time, because Ronnie had come home from work the one day, and she said, hey, you guys, or you're playing at Christmas in the Park in 2 weeks on a Saturday at Cazenovia Park. I'm like, I am? So here's me, ring, ring. Hey, Larry, can you help me out?
And there were a few people in that.
There was Alex.
Yep.
And there was Ian.
Yep. And Charlie was there, wasn't he?
Doug Tisdale.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And I still remember that's another Larryism, because the Tuesday after that, you called me up and you said, I don't know what the hell it was that I was hearing in that basement that night, but everything just seemed to mesh between the 5 people that were there.
Yep.
And I didn't even think about it that way, but you heard that.
Yeah. And it's when you mentioned that where it was, the Kaz Park, that community center.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that's exactly what I remember thinking when we were there, because we got set up. I didn't know what to expect for it. I wasn't sure what kind of situation we were getting into, if it was going to be on a stage or this, that, and the other. But when we got there were a lot of people in that room.
Oh, thousands.
So I'm sitting there going, I don't know how this is going to sound.
Because you played accordion.
Right, no, but I mean, it was such a different room than the little basement that
it was
we've
a
been
gym.
Rehearsing in. Yeah, it was a gymnasium.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what we had as far as amplification or anything, if we had any. But I just remember thinking, I'm going to trust Pete on this one.
Yeah.
Typically in these situations, follow Pete. Everything works out. And we did.
I think I brought these little crate acoustic amps. Well, they're both on the floor right now, but I think that's all we had. And,
And were there microphones on the percussion stuff?
No.
We didn't. Wasn't Alex on?
Alex was playing guitar.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He was playing guitar. I was playing guitar. Ian was playing bass, and you were playing squeeze box.
Okay. I because there were a couple other Christmas situations we found ourselves in.
Yes.
Over the years at various family members' houses.
Right.
So that's why I get mixed up with a whole lot of these things. We've done so many odd one-offs.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
We certainly have. Geez, do you remember that day up at the Cove? It was so hot and humid. I mean, today looks cold compared to that day. And
was that the day your guitar broke? The battery?
The battery, that brand new Fender, yes. And you were playing that, and it was nothing more than the battery, but we couldn't figure out why the hell we couldn't work it plugged in.
Exactly.
But I still remember Ronnie was walking over to the bar and getting wads of paper towels dipped in ice water and bringing up to you and I on the stage because we were just roasting. That was that was a real treat.
That was again about 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
My God.
yeah. It's. Anyway, we're going to do a couple of things a little bit differently right now. We're going to do a couple of little cutaways because we have, instead of video, we're just going to have little audio clips of what Larry felt comfortable with was to just have some of the things that he has played on different songs of mine, where, again, he's always very generous. He comes over here and he'll go ahead and add, he's done mandolin, he's done accordion, he's done
Hey, the
bass.
bottom line is also,
He's
let's
done-
face it, on your show, you don't play that much of your own music.
No, we never do.
That's why I'm thinking this is a good idea as
Oh,
well.
oh, jeez. That wasn't even where I was even considering going with that. But okay, at the moment, then we're just going to do a little bit of a cutaway. So we'll be back in just a minute.
Okay, now you're back.
Nice.
Oh, wait, actually.
Fair.
All right.
Let me do a quick adjustment.
What's that?
Hold on.
He's going to adjust something real
Let me
quick.
adjust something. It's been. I should adjust it first, but this just going like that just pisses me off.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. I just been like, it's like facing him. It's like shoot up a little bit.
Now, do you want to go ahead and do what Larry said and just take a picture or a little bit of whatever instrument it is?
Maybe I'll put your face. This is you smiling.
Tell me again why I
No,
like
get him a picture of him with his head in his hands, just like.
When we did that Richie show that I was telling you
Oh,
about
yeah.
before, it was hysterical because I forget what the heck it was, but that was the first time we actually had Sebastian on camera and stuff.
Oh, he was actually in the show?
Yeah, and whatever happened, and Alex was sitting here, and he's like, and then I was here, and I started doing the same thing. Then Richie did it, and he does a cutaway to himself, real deadpan face. He says, "I work with children."
All right. Are you ready?
Well, what are we doing?
We're going to come back in from that.
Just come back in.
Yeah, you're back.
All right, that was a tune called Peach Rose, in which Larry, that's the one I was talking about earlier, where Larry said, I don't know, I never played a banjo before. And I think you can tell what he was able to do. We're going to do 3 or 4 more of those things because I'd really like everybody that's looking at this to understand just how talented the guy is. And again, he's sitting there giving me the bird
come
over
on,
there.
yeah. I'm going to start throwing things at you.
But no, you write a lot of stuff. How
Yeah,
come-
but actually, no, it's funny. I thought of that when we talked about getting together for all this stuff. All the different people I know who write songs and all the different approaches that we all have to how we do it. And you're one of the guys that I'm curious when because your songs are very, I'm not sure what the word is for it. They're very concrete. And I always wonder, do you go into it with an idea of what you're going to write about? Or does it surprise you? Do you sit there with a guitar and start playing and wait for a song to pop up? Or do you walk down into your basement and go, I got to write a song about...
I thought I was interviewing you.
Well, no, but it's a two-way street.
No, it depends. I mean, today something popped into my head. I grabbed my phone and I just sang it in there just so I didn't forget it.
Okay.
Typically what I'll do, and I do things probably different than 95% of songwriters, is that I will write down what it is that I want to say lyrically. And then I'll come up with a melody for it afterwards. And I'll give you an example about that. You played on this one, The Old Woman's Face.
Yes.
You played mandolin. Our friend Brian Brothman, we were recording some of the percussion parts.
Yeah.
And while we're going through it, he's like, oh, son of a bitch. It started all over. And Doug is going, oh, yeah, no problem, Brian. We'll just keep on doing it. Well, we finally got his percussion track down, and he comes over the other side of the room. He says, Pete, you know what? He says, you know why I kept on screwing up on that? I said, well, no, I didn't. I'm not a drummer, so I'm not going to critique what you're doing, man. You do whatever makes you happy. He says, no. He says,
I was listening to the words.
so it's exactly what it was.
Yep.
That's exactly what he told me.
Means.
And, I've heard that a lot of times is that, it's like, your lyrics are really poignant, and that's what really gets me about some of the stuff that you write. And sometimes, everybody's like, what was that about? And I always go back to that old John Lennon interview. Well, what did it mean to you?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter what it meant to me. What did it mean to you? And, a lot of times there's some things that are in there that are very personal to me, or, if I'm writing about one of my kids or whatever, um, other times it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
You just
Which
write.
is fine. There's nothing wrong with writing some
yeah.
fiction. You can do fiction and nonfiction.
Well, I just did a thing called I'll Just Go Fishing. Now I'm not a fisherman, right? But there was something that was on CMT, and it was the Dukes of Hazzard. I never watched country music before, never watched the videos, but I dug the Dukes of Hazzard, the original TV show, right?
Of course.
And then all of a sudden there were some things that were coming on afterwards, and I'm thinking, this Toby Keith guy, he's really good. This Blake Shelton guy, he's really good.
Where have these guys been all my life?
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, how the hell hard can it be to write a country song? You write about beer, pickup trucks, fishing. So I write this thing, and we just finished it the other day, and they're like, this is so friggin' cool. I'm going to start a few small things just to keep her from bitching. I don't know where to start. I think I'll just go fishing. Now, Larry, you know me, right? I don't like to get my hands dirty. You're not going to see me in a boat throwing lines in. So again,
no, but half of these things end up being euphemisms.
Yes.
Yes. I don't like to get my hands dirty, so I'm going to go do something else. And if that, what better euphemism for going and doing something else is, I'm going to go fishing for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
That's perfect. But that's what I mean. It's like you tend to have a concrete foundation for most of your songs. And some guys do, some guys don't. It's not a better or a worse kind of thing. But I was always curious about that. And it's funny when you mentioned leaving yourself little voice memos and things like that, because I actually hear that from a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Whether it's using your phone for it, or these guys who walk around with pockets stuffed with little slips of paper that they wrote a good idea on.
Yeah.
And they got to go home and transpose them all into a notebook or something like that.
Well, I'll do that too. I'll do it with, if I'm just noodling around with the guitar or something like that, and I get a melody that I just really like the chord progression on, I'll do the same thing. Now, prior to the phone, I used to use a digital recorder.
Okay.
Before that, I'd use a micro cassette recorder.
Yeah. Just
so I didn't forget these things. I mean, yourself, even just, you can play the chord progression, but if you're not hitting the strum the right way,
oh yeah,
it's a totally different
idea can be lost.
Yep.
That's why, that thing that songwriters learn. If you just write down the chords that you were thinking of, that won't mean anything to you the next day.
No, not even close. All right, well, let me throw one back at you, because I've heard Keith Richards say it, I've heard McCartney say it, I've heard a lot of people say it, where they'll wake up in the middle of the night with an idea in their head. Has that ever happened to you?
It's happened once or twice, and it was so long ago, and I've always wished that could be a little bit more of a regular occurrence.
Right.
I can say that there have been also a couple of those times where it's happened, and I've done this other thing that we're talking about, where you kind of say, if it's good, I'll remember it in the morning.
Right.
And then you wake up in the morning and go, I really wish I would have wrote that down, because I'm pretty sure it was pretty good. But
we're going to do another cutaway real quick, because we were just talking about that old woman's face. And again, I called Larry the one day and just said, man, I know how good you play mandolin, and I really think that this song is just begging for that. Now, I've got a mandolin. I can clunk through a couple of chords. I can't play like he does. And, again, he was generous enough to come over here and spend a couple of hours with us. And that was pretty cool that night, because I had just gotten that new blue microphone. And Larry was going to plug the mandolin direct into the board, and I said, well, we can do it that way, or we could try it with the mic. And now this guy is about the most basic guy you could ever want, because he doesn't want to spend $1,000 on a guitar. He'd rather buy something for $150, $200 and make it sound as good as he can. I give him a lot of credit for that. I really respect that, because he treats that $200 guitar just like he would a $2,500 guitar.
Which means I'm really bad at handling both of them. But no, it's funny that the difference on that one, though, is those little blue microphones. I've always been curious about those. So that was really fun. That was my first experience with getting to play with one of them.
Yeah, well, you were the first one that used it. The very first one that used it, because I didn't even know that you had to have phantom power to go to that. I went to use it after that night. And
why isn't this working?
Exactly. I'm like, I just paid all this money for this microphone. I'm plugging it into the amp and it's not working. I didn't know. But we're going to go ahead and play a little bit of That Old Woman's Face, and we'll just be back in a minute. How we doing on time, Sebastian? Have you been watching?
It's 34 minutes. You got 34 minutes. Yeah, you've been through 34 minutes.
Okay, so another 10 or so.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I gotta stop talking. Sometimes hearing the beat, sometimes I want to blow your brains out.
Honesty's the best policy.
Yeah. Wait till I make your food tonight.
Oh, you gotta spit. Drop it on the floor, pick it up.
You'll
What's
be,
all this hair doing in here?
you'll be lucky if that's all I do.
Ooh.
Oh.
He's recording, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Oh. All right. So, there you go. You ready? You're good?
Okay, hey, sorry, mixed signal over there. Yeah, we're back. Again, that was Larry playing on the old woman's face. He was playing mandolin, and it just, it made it come out so good. That song is. I had so many talented people.
I was just gonna say, let's remember to reiterate all the other fine folks who were on that track.
Yeah.
And you've been blessed with a really good solid support crew behind you for all this
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I've always been really impressed with that. I've never seen anyone over here working on stuff who seemed like they were just going through the motions.
Oh no,
Everyone is always really invested in whatever you decided to have everyone do. And I don't even know how it typically works. I'm guessing you call the guys over for recording days and this, that, and the other for those.
Well, here's the thing. The guys all love doing it. They like being creative. Dave Stevens, and I know if he's listening, he's going to tell me that I screwed up this thing again because I'm quoting him. But he says, I would rather create than copy.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just done something. In fact, that's something I'm going to run by you before you leave. I just did this thing with this girl from Germany. She's got the most angelic Judy Collins-ish voice.
Oh, really?
And Dave took this one song of mine. It's called Love, the one that Charlie played at the wedding that day. And he just turned this into a keyboard masterpiece. I'm like, Dave, that is just so beautiful. I sang over it. I'm like, my voice just doesn't work on that, And so I asked this girl that I know through a couple of Facebook songwriter pages in Germany if she would do it.
Take a stab at it?
Yeah, and just leave me out of it. So she sends me a message back. She says, no, I want to do this as a duet instead. I'll be damned. Did it not come out fantastic?
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I really want to hear that.
Yeah, it came out really great. But, again, we're talking too much about me because you're deflecting things. That's the way you are in bands.
But let's be honest. Again, this is the other thing about this is we're talking about stuff that people can then go and check out on their own. And you've got some of this stuff out there. Your music is out there. And I as someone who's not really a computer guy, I haven't done social media and everything for years. I hear your songs when you show them to me. How do they exist out in the world? Do you have?
Typically, they're on Reverb Nation or Facebook.
Okay. How many do you have out there right now? If you go on your Reverb Nation page.
Well, that's kind of hard to tell because when I first started that page, I would just go on there and just do an acoustic version of me doing them,
which is fine.
But then I would redo them with whatever
the full band
formation
effect.
of the band. We're really lucky right now. We've got a guy named Gary Poncho, who is the bass player for the Noblemen with Alex. And he says to me the one day, he says, how about if we got a drummer? I said, sure. Do you know somebody? Well, he brings over Brian Brothman, and Brian is such an absolute pro. And he's the same thing. He'll listen to it and he just wants to jump into it, and he won't stop until it's done the way that he wants it done.
Nice. And
he'll look at me. He says, so are you happy with that? I'm like, what do you mean? Am I happy with it? I'm not a drummer, man. Are you happy with it? Because until you are, when you tell me you're happy with it, then I'm happy with it. Maybe that's just the way I am, but you can't leave out Doug Tisdale. That guy is a wizard.
I know. Watching him develop into your right hand man for a lot of these things.
Yes.
I've always wondered if he ever brings his own songs in or not.
Actually, he has brought a couple of them in. There was one that was kind of so cool because the one day he says, can I play something for you? I said, yeah, of course. So he plugs in his amp and he starts playing this thing. And I got up and I walked and he stops playing. He says, don't you like this? And I said, keep playing. I'm going to get a pad. Oh, why? I said, because it's what you're playing musically is giving me lyrics in my head.
Oh my gosh, no kidding.
And, before you know it, that's what we named the first CD, Wrong Side of the Law. That was what the whole thing came out to be. And again, the whole thing is bullshit because it's talking about me being down in Tijuana, which I've never been.
Pete's never left Western New York, folks. It's okay.
Some guys walk into a bar and I had to leave and go grab my 6 gun and shoot them down because they were coming after me. That never happened. But that's, the songwriting process. You do it yourself.
Yes. Well, that's what I mean. You have to have fun with it. You have to be imaginative with it.
Yeah.
You have to make things up sometimes.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's really cool, though. I in my experience, I've seen him again support you to such an extent that I've always wondered if that happens sometimes. And
Yeah,
I got a riff for you. So we're gonna do this.
It just happened again recently. In fact, we're working on it right now. He'd been playing this, and I kept on telling him. I said, "Doug, you've got to get me some type of a audio track of this thing,
Oh, so
I can listen
yeah.
to it." I said, "What you've played on? Actually, he was playing it on a classical guitar. It sounded beautiful." I'm like, "I love this." I said, "But I don't have anything to reference to." So we finally did that. We finally finished it off. I finally put words to it, and that's going to be one of the next ones we record with the full band.
Oh, very nice.
But
Very nice.
Now we're starting our 5th. Well, we're 3/4 of the way through our 5th CD.
Okay.
So yeah, you can't go by Reverb Nation, which is what you asked me, but yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff out there.
Okay. And you have like a catalog.
Oh, yeah.
People can order the CDs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Nobody has anything to play a CD on anymore, but
Tell me about it.
they can definitely do that.
I know what you mean. I think old Blu-ray players still play.
Your influences.
It's a growing list.
I know at one point it was the Beach Boys.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's part of the foundation for me and stuff like that. But I still love finding new stuff, and letting it kind of filter through and everything. I've been listening to a lot of old jazz records in the last few years.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just the vibe of the room that those guys had, all playing in this small room. And it's funny because listening to a huge number of the classic jazz records from the mid to late 50s were all recorded at one guy's house.
Yeah.
In his parents' living room with a upright piano and this very small drum kit. And, listening to these records, they sound like they're in this smoky club and it's the coolest place in the world.
Right.
And it's this little house in New Jersey, that these guys were probably coming over at like 3 PM. And it's just such a great vibe and stuff like that. So, that influences me because it's like, gosh, next time I get around to doing a recording project or something, I want to see if I can transcend things. I'm always recording in a basement or something like that. But
is that the bass player in you? Do you think, or
I'm not sure.
I reaching too deep.
I lost track of that kind of thing over the years. I used to approach things, I'm playing guitar, so this is going to be a guitar song.
Okay.
This is going to be a piano song. And nowadays it just is what it is,
Okay.
There just aren't any boundaries for it after a while. And you probably know what I mean. Once upon a time, like you said, your idea of making music was you and your acoustic guitar and recording. And now you get to the point now where you can show people the song and it can turn into, you can write a song and have it turn into this classical piano piece with a beautiful female singer from Germany taking care of the vocals.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That's what I mean. It's like there aren't really any boundaries for that stuff. It's just hard to keep track of the fact that you do have to rein it in sometimes. You can, sometimes you don't want to think too big. Every song you don't want it to be, a 7-part epic. 16 different sections. Every once in a while you got to rein it in. I tell myself that all the time, because I start songs like you do lately, where I start with writing the lyrics and stuff like that.
Right.
And I'll get to the point where, this goes well with this. And then after a while, I'm looking at it, I'm going, that's like 8 sections long. What if I get rid of everything in the middle? And then you get the beginning and the ending, and it's the same story for the most part. So I'm, if anything, influence-wise, I'm still really, really curious about the process and how different people approach this stuff. And again, that's why it's been so cool that I get to work with a pretty wide variety of people.
Right.
And even with some surprise guests thrown in every once in a while, someone you'll play with and
Do you ever bring any of your songs to the band?
No, because I don't. The bands specifically that I play with are songwriter oriented in the
Understood.
first spot. You know what I mean? The Chris Squire band, for example, everyone in that band writes, and everyone in that band, when we sit around, if we're going on a road trip somewhere, if we're all in the band together, we'll play the game of everyone will show their latest projects.
Really?
You know, and it's so neat to hear it. You know, to hear everyone's different voice, songwriting voice come through. But for the band itself, we've kicked the idea around of starting almost a side project that would be a little more inclusive of everybody's writing or what have you, or some more writing together collaborations and things like that. But we haven't gotten to that point yet, in part because schedules are really busy.
Right.
And the last year and a half was a bit of a wash in a lot of ways.
Yep.
I hate to use that as an excuse, because there's a lot of people out there who probably used the last year and a half really well creatively. Unfortunately, I was not one of those people. I kind of dealt with learning how to work from home and all that kind of fun stuff that I'm sure plenty of people can relate to. No one wants to do another Zoom call for the rest of their lives. But
No.
Yeah.
No, I've had it with those.
But yeah, it's a nice world to be in right now. It's nice now that we're getting life back to normal. So getting out and playing a little bit with a whole bunch of my friends.
Okay.
Looking forward to hopping on a stage with you at some point in the not too distant future.
Absolutely love that. You know, and again, I have to thank you for all the times that you have done that. And
we have fun.
We absolutely do. Absolutely. And again, you know, he's jumped in on drums for a gig that we had.
We play whatever we play. Are you kidding? It's the same exact thing with you. If I called you up and said, Pete, I need someone to play bass on this real quick, you'd say, what do you want me to play?
I'd say call Ian. I don't know how to play bass. No,
Ian, if you're listening.
I get your point. Thank you. Anyway, we're running short on time, but we're gonna make sure that we slide a couple more of these Larry things in there, because there's some of them that are just so good, and one of them in particular was on one that he played accordion on, and it's called "Look Forward to Tomorrow." We'll make sure that one's in there as well. But how we doing? You good, man?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. I got to thank you so much for doing this, man. It's been very cool.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation. We'll have to do it again sometime.
I really hope so. I mean, what are you, a hop, skip, and
I was just going to say,
right?
I was just going to say, if I stand on your roof, I can probably see my house.
Exactly. And maybe we can even do it live the next time.
Yeah.
You know,
by all means. Cool. By all means.
Thank you to Larry Smith. That was really cool. Good conversation as always. And again, feel free to go ahead and leave any comments. We'll be glad to address them. And I got a feeling he'll be back because, again, he's pretty close and he's good friends. So with that being said, thank you to Larry Smith. Thank you to Sebastian DeJesus, who took time out of his day. I hope he's recovered. I hope he's more hydrated from being
Actually, don't talk so loud. He's sleeping right now.
Oh, he is? I thought I heard a snore. Anyway, thanks for watching Three Chords and the Truth. I'm Pete Kramer, and we'll check it out later. Thanks. Yeah, exactly. The one night you came over.